All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today. This webinar is part of a series a series called the Unpacking Coaching Webinar Series that the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations hosts. I am your host today. I'm Louise Hemmeter, and I feel honored to be here with the teachers that we have with us today, and you'll be hearing from them in a few minutes. All of the resources that we talk about will be available on the resource page where this webinar is hosted. I'm going to turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves real quickly before we get started. Carly, I'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Carly Jennings. This is my 8th year teaching preschool. I am in Kentucky in the Warren County School District, and I'm at Plano Elementary, and I participated in coaching for 2 years.
And my name is Amber Beal. I am Carly Jennings' assistant in the classroom. This is my 2nd year with her, and this was my first year. Last year was my first year being in the study.
My name's Kimberly Williams, and I work at Murfreesboro Head Start. I've been teaching 28 years, and as of tomorrow, it will be 29 years.
Thank you, and welcome, you guys. I think what's exciting for me about this panel is that we have people who have been involved in coaching. We have people who work together in classrooms. We represent both infant toddler settings and pre-K settings. So I think you're in for a real treat today. So I'm going to just jump right in and start. And the way that we're going to organize this is I'm going to ask the participants some questions. There we go. And they're going to just take turns responding, and then we'll intermix the questions that you all put in the Q&A box. So I'm going to start with our first question. And our first question is, what are some things your coach did to build a partnership with you? So when you started coaching, what was something your coach did that was effective in helping to build a partnership with you? And Amber, I'm going to let you start.
Perfect. The one thing that I love that our coach did, especially for me being new to the classroom in preschool and new to the study last year, was she really made me feel comfortable asking me. Before I came to Carly's classroom, I worked in a kindergarten classroom. So she really put forth that step to make me feel comfortable getting to know me on a personal level, but also professionally. Different things that I've come across in my teaching experience here at Plano and in the past. And she also, what I really liked is she also took time to ask me how I like to get feedback, whether it's right on the spot or if I needed it later. And that to me made me feel really comfortable with her. It allowed me to feel like I can open up to her, whether she was in our classroom or last year we had to do some virtual observations due to COVID. And I always felt like it never bothered her if we were in a moment and I felt stuck. I could say to her and feel comfortable, hey, can you help me with this? I need another solution or another, option to try. So I just felt she was really invested in getting to know me on a personal and also professional level.
Great, thank you. Carly.
Our coach also did a feelings check-in at the beginning of our meeting. She would ask us personally how we're feeling and then professionally how we were feeling. She was always an active listener and would let us speak freely with no judgment. And she always gave us like immediate positive feedback, which was so good to hear. And all the room for improvement was just held in such a positive manner that you just wanted to work on those things that she talked about.
Great, thank you. Kimberly.
One thing Abby did for us is she did a form when we first got started, wanting to know about us personally, like things we liked, dislikes on the job and personally off the job. And one thing she would do every now and then is bring us either little candies or even go to McDonald's and bring us sweet tea. So she wanted to know about us also because she knew we were in the classroom. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed because we were able to bond but she also wanted to really know about us and not just the students we worked with, but us as well as teachers.
Thank you. You know, I want to kind of say a little plug for these three. These three have been in the classroom all day with kids, and they literally came straight to this webinar as children were leaving the classroom. So I want to thank y'all for that. So when we do training on pyramid model, after we do training, teachers often say to us things like, "Oh my gosh, where do I begin? There's so much to do. Where do I begin?" And so, Carly, I'm going to ask you, like, how did we often hear teachers say that coaches helped them figure out where to begin. So how did you and your coach figure out where to begin or what to work on?
The very first year of the study, we worked on the routines within routines and making visuals for the classroom. And what I really liked, we knew that was the need in our classroom, just by how my transitions were and how the routines were going. And we always worked on what was needed and based on the needs in the classroom. And then the second year of the study, we just built upon our action plans that we had kept from the first year.
Right, great. Amber, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, what I also loved about our coach too was she'd always ask us, and I think Carly kind of touched this on a little bit, the last question you had asked her, really talking to us about the challenges that we had, whether it was that week or maybe it was a long holiday and the kids were going to be out of school for a while. So what are those challenges that we foresee happening in the future? And she was very proactive in helping us kind of come up with a plan so that when they came back, we could get them back into that routine easily. And I think having the routines within routines made that transition for our friends go so smoothly, especially after those long breaks or when we had to go to NTI and then come back to in person. So all of those things were extremely helpful. Another thing, I know Carly talked about it too, was just that open dialogue. Our coach made us feel so comfortable that we could talk freely and there was no judgment. I mean, I could say, I don't know what to do here and I need some help. And she would jump right on it and, wouldn't make me feel bad that I didn't know how to fix something or, a way to go to solve a problem, which I thought was really important. And again, for me being new to the study, I remember coming into it quite nervous because Carly had done it the year prior and having that just helped calm all of my nerves completely.
Love that. Kimberly, what about you?
I think our biggest concern with our children was more social emotional based. And I know Abby, her first step was to come in and observe the children. That way we kind of knew where to sit our goals and our action plans towards. That way we could help the children. And she was great on, asking me and my co-teacher at that time, what we wanted to work on and how we wanted to prioritize them. That way we knew where to start and how to start and set a plan to go from there.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that y'all have talked about, because I think that one of the things I hear a lot from teachers around coaching, around practice-based coaching, is how much it's about what you need help with as a teacher, right? What you need help with or how you can meet the needs of your kids or whatever. And that makes it different sometimes than I think what other people have experienced in something that might have been considered coaching. So thank you. So Carly and Amber, I'm going to let y'all talk a little bit about one of your action plans you did with your coach.
This action plan was teaching calm down strategies to children in our classroom. Based on the needs in our classroom last year, we had a lot of children who they would react by hitting or they didn't know how to handle those strong emotions. So we chose certain strategies to teach them based on like talking to our coach and what we were already trying to do in the classroom to make this action plan. So that's why we chose the goal. And then let's see, we just kind of built upon it. And I'm not sure if we even finished this one. I think we were still working on it at the time.
Yeah, and we were able to track the students' progress from when we started to it by seeing them being able to do it independently. So, we would model the behavior. If a friend got upset, we would show them the Tucker turtle. And I think that was one of the really neat things is you see them become independent and do it to themselves, or they see a friend who needs a moment and then they jump in and would say, could say something like, hey, remember, we need to breathe, or, we're going to tuck into our shell. And I think that was really cool, which I that's something you can't document like on paper. I feel like that's just one of those like, moments, like, in the classroom where you actually see them do that independently. And that's really the goal. It's for them to become independent, to be able to manage those feelings.
And we even had some students that would go up to others and try to help them with like the taking big breaths and some of those strategies that we were using. So that was really awesome to see.
So I love a couple of things. One is I love that you're talking about the impact it had on the children, right? So, we're always doing the action plan, and it's about teachers changing their behavior or implementing practices. But what's so cool is to see that when you do that, something really happens with children. And then I think the other cool thing about your example is the idea that some kids got it so well that they were able to help their friends do it. I mean, that's a really good example of how kids are deeply learning to do these things when they get so good they can help their friends. So thank you. So Kimberly, do you want to talk a little bit about some things your coach provided you, materials to support your implementation of pyramid?
We had what was called a first and then. We had a particular little boy who had some emotional issues going on. So what we did a first and then, because it seemed like when he couldn't do what he wanted to at that point, he would have a breakdown with his emotions. So he couldn't focus on what he needed to do. So we would first give him the choice of first you do the cleanup and then you can go color, or first because he needed things in smaller steps. He couldn't do 3 or 4 steps. We had to break it down in 1 or 2. But as he got older, we were able to go to them more steps. So first if he cleaned up, he could have the expo markers and the expo board. And that was one of the things he really enjoyed to do. And then as he got older, we went, first you do this, then you can do this or this. You could have 2 choices. That way that gave him a choice that he felt like he was making the choice on what he wanted to do.
Cool. And Kimberly, did Kimberly keeps responding or referring to Abby, who was her coach. Did Abby actually help you make the materials, help you prepare the materials?
Abby made all of our materials for us. We did not Abby was one to say, we're going to do these, but I'll make them for you because I know y'all don't have enough time to do more things. So I will make them and bring them my next visit. And she always did without a pre-bail. Abby always had our material when she come back that following visit.
So I want to just say a little bit about that. So this was part of a study. And so we had some resources to help make materials. But for those of y'all who are coaching or who are supervising coaches in the field or supporting coaches in the field, this is a really important part of coaching, which is recognizing that implementing the pyramid model requires a lot of materials and a lot of really individualized materials. It's not like I can make a visual schedule and it's going to give everybody a copy of the same one, right? It's got to be individualized to that teacher. And it's not always the case that coaches have the time or the resources to make those materials, but I do think it's important to think about how do we create time and space to make those materials. So if coaches can't make them for teachers, then part of the action plan should be, how are we going to create time and space for the teachers to make those materials, or to have volunteers make those materials or whatever. But just think about that as you're thinking about, because if you say to a teacher, you need to use a first then board and they don't know how to make one and they don't have time to make one, then the follow through isn't about they don't want to use the first then schedule. The follow through issue might just be they don't have time or the resources or the knowledge about how to make it.
Yep.
Do any of y'all want to comment on that? All right, so I think Amber and Carly, these are some of your all's materials. Would y'all like to talk about these?
Sure. Tucker Turtle on the top left, that was something that was provided by the study. But our coach made little cards for us to keep on our lanyards. So if we were in the moment with a friend, we would have it right there where we need it. And then our school, we started out with no mask mandate for preschool. And then it was about a month in, and we started having to wear masks for preschool. So our coach provided us with that social story, wearing masks. And I'll let Amber talk about the matrix that's the top middle.
Yes, I remember back to, I think, the first meeting that I had when I came onto the preschool team last year for the study, was they brought up this matrix, and being new, I thought that was like the most brilliant thing that anybody has created or come up with concept wise, because it allowed, there were 3 of us in our classroom, and it allowed each of us to know what we were doing, where the other people were, the other team members were. So we weren't like crossing over each other. We could, I believe, zoned out the rooms, and I knew what I was responsible for. Carly knew what she was responsible for, and then our other assistant knew what she was responsible for. So it just kept us working like a very well-oiled machine.
And then that bottom section, those were token boards that our coach had created for us for some friends who were having trouble setting during carpet time, things like that. So she made those for us and like taught us, modeled how to use it. And it was successful. They ended up the year sitting in the carpet area with us. Mm-hmm. And then the top right, as my coach was in the classroom and we were talking about having visuals for everything, my large group times, the carpet times, were a little more chaotic. And so she provided us, she made all of these for me and even color coded them so I would know which group time it was. I would use those during groups so the children would know what we were doing, and also I would know what we were supposed to be doing. So that was really helpful. That bottom picture is a family resource that our coach provided for us. We had a student who we focused on more last year who was learning how to play with toys by their function and appropriately play with toys. And his parents didn't really understand what appropriate play looked like. So our coach provided us with several materials. So this was just one of them that was super easy for them to understand and to kind of see what the child should be doing at home.
So these are great. And about 5 things came up for me while y'all were talking, but one that I want to just speak to really quickly is one of you said something about you weren't wearing masks and then you were wearing masks. And one of the things that I want to kind of bring, kind of highlight is that things are changing every day right now, right around COVID and mandates and no mandates and when we're starting school and all of that. And being really intentional about how we support children through that is obviously very important, but also being really intentional about how we support teachers through this is really important, right? And so for those of y'all on the call who are coaches, I just want you to think about, it's one thing for teachers to be responding to kids and trying to be consistent and have predictable routines, but for them to do that, we really have to figure out as coaches and administrators how to provide teachers time for that, right? So, all of a sudden we need new visuals, right? Because we have new mandates. How are we going to get those new visuals made? So I wanted to just speak about that. So a participant had a question, or a couple of participants had questions about what's on the matrix. So could one of y'all talk a little bit specifically about what's on the actual matrix?
So the matrix is basically a daily schedule, but it's very detailed and it's for the teachers only. And it's super helpful if you ever have a sub in the classroom. We keep several posted up around our room. What we do on the left is we broke down the schedule, and then we have 3 columns for the 3 teachers in the classroom. For example, like for arrival, my job is to greet the families at the door and help the children with backpacks. My another assistant is hand washing and handing out breakfast. And the last assistant is working on, they make commitments, if you're familiar with
Mhm.
conscious discipline, or answering our question of the day related to our curriculum. So it's just very detailed, and it's super helpful for anyone that just walks into the classroom and has to help out.
Yeah, and one of the things I like is to encourage teaching teams to do this together, because I think we get in this rut where we think the assistant always wants to do this and the lead always wants to do that. But sometimes if we take the time to have those conversations with the classroom team, we find out that the assistant really wants to do something different, right? And there's an opportunity for people to take on different roles in the classroom. But it also just helps us have a really predictable routine ready when the kids get to school in the morning. So yeah, someone, participant said something about they like to help teachers create this matrix or some kind of visible way to assign roles and responsibilities. All right, so I'm going to go on to this next one. And Kimberly, I kind of got ahead of myself a minute ago, and you've talked a little bit about these, but do you want to say anything else about things that your coach helped you make?
We made so many, and that these are good. And these are sort of like what we had, but we had some other ones that also had with our schedule. It had the whole schedule, and then we took all the schedule off, but what we were doing at that time, and then giving them a 5-minute warning when we were going to the next one. And then when we Velcroed that up so that they could know what was coming up. Like say we're having group time, we gave the 5-minute warning. So then we put up that we're going to have free play time. And so they would know that, hey, in 5 minutes, we're going to be able to have free play once we're done. So, and that's kind of where our schedule came in. That's, from 7:30 to 8:30, we did breakfast. They arrived, we did a health check, but we also did a feelings check-in with them. And we have a homeschool chart, and then we had feelings on it also, happy, sad, angry, and the children would tell us how they were feeling that morning, so they could check how they were feeling that morning. And then maybe later on in the day, we would even go back and ask them, now, how are you feeling? Are you any different from this morning? And they may change it and they may not. It just depends on that child and how they're feeling. Then from 8:30 to 9, we had breakfast. We eat family style, talk to them about the day, talk about their feelings and what went on at home that night before, letting them know that we're really invested and we want to know about them. So that's when them open conversations will be going on. From 9 to 10, we are outside having our gross motor time. 10 to 10:50, we come in, wash hands, free play, go into the bathroom. Then from 10:50 to 11, we'd have cleanup, hand washing, and preparing for lunch. And then 11 to 11:30, we have lunch. And then they have nap time at 12 to 1:15, which if they don't sleep, we give them something quietly to do. They are not required to sleep. And then from 1:15 to 1:45, we get up, wash hands, diapering, toileting, have a snack, again, having them open conversations with them. And then 1:45 to 2:15 would be free play. And then 2:15, they go home.
I think having this schedule this well articulated is good for the adults and the kids, right? To really kind of know what's going on.
It is, because I know what, our day is like. And so they're prepared for what the day is like. I know with each classroom, it takes a little while for them to get into it. And I still even use my visuals that Abby made for us where the Velcro's on them. That way I can give them that warning and say, hey, okay, this is what's coming on up next. And, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however, long I want to give them, because I know some children need a little bit longer than 5 minutes. So I adapt it to them. So it may be 10-minute warning. It just kind of depends on what I feel they need.
Got it. So Carly and Amber, I warned you that I might lob a question your way, and I'm about to do it. So anyway, we had a participant say that in the chat, she's saying that the three of y'all all really seem bought into the pyramid model, and that probably makes coaching a little easier. What brought y'all in, and how do you think we get other people bought into the pyramid model and bought into coaching around pyramid versus they, this participant said something about, they having teachers who do it because they have to do it versus because they see some value in it. So I wonder if y'all can just speak to that.
Okay, I'll go first. It's actually what I was going to talk to, I think, on like the next slide that you're going to ask me a question on.
Well, let me just, this one.
Let me think. I believe that was, yes. So, I think for me, what made a huge difference was knowing that she wasn't there to judge you. Like there was no judgment. If you did something wrong, you know, she wasn't going to point it out to you right then and there and, you know, make you feel like, you know, you don't know what you're doing. You know, she's there to help you grow. And that was the one thing that I really appreciated, because she would always tell us that she was here to help us grow. And I was appreciative of that, because when you have a coach who's invested in you and it's a genuine investment, you can feel that from the coach. It makes a world of difference. And it really helped me open up to the coaching experience being brand new last year, because she made me feel like my growth mattered to her. And it wasn't just my growth in the classroom. It was growth that I even took home to my own kids. And the way that I, you know, could formulate different ways of approaching certain situations. So that to me, I think was extremely helpful for me to be opened up to allowing myself to take in the study completely, being new last year.
And I think too, as an educator, you have to have a growth mindset. And I went into the study nervous at first, but also excited, because someone is actually going to be in the classroom to help and model for me. But also I could see the progress that the children were making. And that's what really made me buy into the pyramid model practices.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole session on how to get people bought into pyramid, but ultimately it seems to me the thing that buys people in is that they see the impact it has on the children in their classroom, just how their classroom runs. Kimberly, do you have anything you want to add to that before I get us back to talking about observations?
I think the 2 days that we also came to Vanderbilt really helped me, because when Tiara and Abby and you were all there giving us that insight on how we were going to use all these things, it really put my mind at ease that, okay, we really, you know, there are some really good ideas in here that we could try for these children. Because with me working at a Head Start program, our children are poverty driven. And a lot of them have a lot of social emotional issues that stem from their environment at home. And so when they come here and you're not sure on how to handle a certain situation, when I went into coaching, it's helped me have that outlook that, hey, Abby and I talked about this. Let me pull out my notes and look. And yeah, I may need to tweak that some towards that child, but I still have those ideas and the model that Abby did for us when it came to doing those, because I am a visual learner. So I needed that to see it. And if, you know, I wasn't getting something quite right, Abby would show me, hey, you know, try this, and it would work. So I think that's one thing that coaching has helped me realize, that as a teacher, because I've been teaching for a long time, the old school ways don't always work anymore. You need them new perspectives and new set of eyes to help you see, hey, we could do this instead of that and get a totally different result, and actually a better one at the same time.
Yeah, and another question someone has, and I'm just going to answer this real quick, is someone has a question about whether the coaches had been classroom teachers. And in our work, we only hire people to be coaches who have had experience in classrooms, because we think that coaches being able to say, well, when I was a teacher, blah, 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 or here's what I tried and it didn't work the first time and then I kept doing it and it worked. So we feel like teaching experience is really important. All right, I'm going to get us back to this question that's on the slide. So Kimberly, do you want to talk a little bit? So we started talking about this issue about how do you make teachers comfortable during observations? And I think none of us like to be observed, right? It
Nope.
always makes one nervous. So what did your coach do that helped you feel comfortable with her coming into the classroom and observing you?
She just, she reminded us, hey, I'm coming. I'm going to be another set of hands. I'm going to be there every step of the way, and I'm going to help y'all. She says, there's nothing in the classroom I wouldn't expect you to do that I wouldn't do. And she did. She came in. I mean, we would make a mess because I'm one of them teachers that I love for them to be able to be hands-on and do whatever. And so, I mean, she would leave here with paint on her, glue all over her, but she didn't care. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed with Abby, because she stepped in that room. She knew where we were coming from because she had been a teacher at one time. And she knows that the children learn basically through play. And that's the best way to teach them, is letting them explore them things. And I think that's a very good thing when it comes to coaching, because like you said, a lot of teachers don't like somebody coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to observe you, and this is, that's not how this is at all. When them coaches are coming in, they're coming in to coach you and help you and support you. They're not coming in to judge you or what you're doing. They're there to give you new ideas and new perspective on how to handle issues.
Yeah. We always say that one of the ways to get people bought in is to not worry about cleaning up spilled milk if it happens while you're out there coaching, right? You just jump in.
Yep.
Carly and Amber, do y'all have anything to add about that?
Sure. Well, our coach would always jump in too, and she would help with dismissal, getting them ready to go home. She did our question of the day a few times for the arrival routine. And something that I wanted her to do was model for me how to teach peer mediated skills during our family meeting time. So she modeled teaching those skills for me. And she also modeled during center time how to use those calm down strategies. And I think just jumping in made me feel super comfortable with her.
Yeah. So this is really, we could go on and on about this, but I want to just make a couple of points about things y'all have said, and we're going to kind of skip forward a little bit. But one is that, so they talked about different things the coach actually did during the observation, like actually helping with kids, like modeling with kids, like giving feedback in the context, all those kind of things. Those are all really effective strategies, and it's really important to individualize those to the teachers. So when we were preparing for today and they were talking about these, I was saying, I've had some, we've worked with some teachers who did not want to model for them with the kids, and yet these guys loved for the coach to do that. So I think it's important. And somebody mentioned at the beginning that the coach having them fill out a survey about how they liked feedback, and that's the kind of thing we want to know. Do you want us to model when you're in the midst of working with kids, or would you prefer us to talk about it later? So think about kind of how you plan that. I want to just kind of revisit a point that I made a minute ago. Just I'm tracking the questions and answers, but when someone asked me if our coaches had classroom experience, I said yes. They also get very intensive training in practice-based coaching. So it's not that we just take teachers and have them be coaches. We hire people who have had experience as teachers, who have had experience working with adults, and then we train them in the practice-based coaching model. The other thing we do that I think, for those of y'all who work support coaches, the other thing we do is our coaches meet really regularly and go over any questions that teachers have that they don't feel like they've got the best answer to, or to talk about challenging situations. So we expect that just like teachers need support, coaches are going to need support. So I wanted to just kind of throw that out there. Now I've lost myself where I am. Whose slide is this, and do you want to talk about it? I think this is you, Carly, is it?
Yes, it's mine. I'll talk about it. The left side of the picture are routines within routines visuals. The top one was arrival, and then nap time at the bottom, and then in the middle was a a daily schedule, an individualized daily schedule that our coach had printed out all those pictures for us and helped us with the idea of how to put the schedule together. And then the right, that was data collection forms. Our coach modeled for us how to collect data. And when she would come in for her observation, she would collect data and also try to compare it with ours to see if we were doing it accurately, to teach us how to use those forms.
And some of these visuals that are on this screen for kids, how did y'all actually introduce those to children?
We're actually doing it right now, the arrival. So during small group time, where we take time to teach those routines, and like arrival in the morning, during the time, like we point to the pictures, and by the end of the year, I'll have children go up to the picture and do it all independently, without any help. So that's why I love those so much.
Okay, anything else about those visuals? So y'all need to know that Carly and Amber have had kids. Yesterday was the first day, I think. So all of this is very fresh this year for sure. So, all right, we're going to move to this next kind of thinking about the reflection and feedback component of practice-based coaching. Can y'all talk a little bit about how coaching helped you be more reflective about your practice, what your coach did to help you be reflective? And I think, Amber, you're going to start this one.
Perfect. Yeah, so through coaching, I've learned to, I think, to understand that it's okay that I don't have all the resources in my brain, and it's okay to ask for help if I feel I need help. So I've learned to, in certain stressful situations, to take that step back and implement strategies that we were taught. One that we used quite often last year was with two of our younger nonverbal students when they were upset, trying to find the right way to help calm them down. And it consisted of 2 steps, which came to us from our coach, which was first deep breath, then hug. So we were able to use that with them quite often. And I remember when we first started, we would just kind of go and give them that hug. You know, that's your instinct. But it's teaching them to calm their bodies first. And then you get the next, you know, it's that first then strategy like Kimberly uses in hers as well. Then we would give age appropriate feedback, where I think so often we're so quick to be like, good job, that was great. And I remember when our coach Kim was in here, she had us tweak it slightly. And instead of saying good job, we would say good breath or good breathing. And it helped the children and all the friends in our classroom, really, when we would implement, and we implement that with all of our students. I think that piece of advice that she gave us, we were able to implement that across the board for all of our friends. And as a mom, I even use it at home with my kids. So I think that helped them, you know, understand what they did instead of just saying good job.
Carly, did you have things about how your coaching helped you be more reflective?
Yes. At the end of the day, I would always reflect on my lessons and the behaviors that happened. How did we manage it? What can we do the next day? And then one of our action plans was, you all saw earlier, teaching the calm down strategies and implementing Tucker Turtle. So we began teaching that in a large group, but that was not successful. It was too hard to tell which children were learning the skills. So we decided to do that in center time, where we would work with children individually and we would role play with them. And that's something our coach modeled for us too, actually, how to implement that. So we knew what to do.
Got it. And you said it wasn't working. You said something about it wasn't working. How did you know it wasn't working? What told you that it wasn't working?
Well, at the time, because of restrictions and everything, our small group was my entire class spread out at tables. And it was just very hard for me to know a class of 20 which ones could do like the certain strategies we're teaching. So that's just how I knew. I could tell.
Got it.
I don't know. Is there anything else that we noticed?
No, I think that was the biggest thing. I think there were so many changes last year in school that we had to do, keeping them, so many feet apart. And I think even sometimes, even in our large group, I mean, we had spots throughout the entire classroom, and we realized that wasn't working either, because a friend who's sitting on one side might not be able to see us, directly. There's the barriers of our shelves and things that we have around the classroom. So I think we learned a lot last year, to say the least.
One of the things I love that all three of y'all keep saying is that you notice something about kids, and your first response is, how do we change what we're doing? Like you just said about, oh, he couldn't see, right? Like it might appear that the child's doing something that's somewhat challenging, and then you realize it's just about where the child's sitting. But that takes skill to stop and go, what can I do to change this situation? So anyway, Kimberly, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about feedback, and maybe what's the best piece of feedback you received from your coach, or what's a really good example of feedback you received from your coach that really worked?
Our child that we had that was on the mainly, we used this social emotional piece for him, because he did have a lot of emotions just going on. And it's like he did a 360, because when we were in the younger toddler room, you didn't see a whole lot of it. And then we moved up to the older toddler room, and we weren't sure what was going on. And then once Abby started working with us and giving us strategies to work with him, the one thing that really worked with him is letting him have a few minutes on the carpet, when he was having an emotional time, to take something in, letting him sit there and breathe through it. And giving him that time I think watching him do it, I think he was thinking to himself, okay, this is my me time, and I get to calm down. And then we tell him, when you're ready to go to what's next, come find me or Miss Catherine, and we will go on to the next thing. And he would get himself calmed down, and he would come find us. But we kind of got to what was really going on. Right after that, Mom found out she was pregnant. And I think he was sensing that Mom was pregnant. And I think that's where his emotions started coming in. I think he was realizing that he wasn't going to be the baby of the family no more, and there was going to be another baby. And so I think it really struck him, and he knew before any of us, I think, because after the baby was born and he moved to our Head Start, our pre-K program, he was fine.
Got it. Harley, what's been most helpful about receiving feedback from your coach?
I just think it makes you have a growth mindset, and it makes you want to improve your teaching. And it also made me feel more confident as a teacher and as the lead in the classroom. And one of the things, I always knew that positive descriptive feedback was important, but I think until our coach discussed this with us and modeled for us, I didn't understand how important it was, and we use it all day long now. And also teaching those peer mediated skills. I always knew it's important that children take turns and share, but how do you actually teach it? And having the coach provide those materials and breaking down the steps of how to teach those, like getting attention and ask for a turn, things like that, was just so helpful, and it just made me feel more confident.
So one thing that you and Kimberly just talked about that strikes me is y'all are really experienced teachers, and that you're talking about what your coach did to help you. What do you think it is? This is so off script, but what is it? Why, as someone who's really experienced, is it still helpful to have a coach?
For me, I think it was, I've been teaching my oldest daughter will be 31 soon. I started teaching when she was not quite 2 because I knew there were some developmental issues going on, and I just couldn't get anybody to understand that she had those. And finally, when I finally got her in, it was almost 2nd grade, finally somebody got on the same page I was on, because I'd started, working on my associate's degree, and I started getting some of that knowledge. And I think what helped me was I was an old school teacher. They have them older methods. Nowadays, children, we're in a different society. Children are a lot different than they were back in 1990 and 1971 when I was born. Totally different. And there's a lot of different, grandparents are raising grandchildren, aunts and uncles are raising grandchildren or children. And unfortunately for these children, a lot of them are younger. I mean, I have custody of my granddaughter. Didn't think I would ever be raising my grandchildren. And I just turned 50. So I'm having to have a new mindset with her, because it's not like it was when I was raising my children. Mm-hmm. So I have to look at my children that come in my classroom. It's the same way. They're not born in 1990. This is 2020, 2021. They need a different perspective. And that's helped me be able to learn with them, to be able to guide them in a different perspective than back in the times that I was going through school.
Yeah, and what I've heard from all of y'all that I just love so much is this notion of a growth mindset. And just knowing, I always think about this with athletes, the best athletes have coaches, right? Like you can never be good enough, right? Or that probably didn't come out right, but you can always do things better in new ways and grow. So I love that. Was there anything else about this slide that any of y'all wanted to say before I kind of move on to our final slide, or did we cover it all?
One thing I did want to say is when we were also doing our coaching, it wasn't just for us teachers though. Our children that we had some social emotional issues with, like the documentation, we also sent that home with the parents to kind of do. That way they knew what we were doing at school to help them. So maybe implementing it at home, we could help each other. And it made that bridge with all of us, that the child realized, hey, my mom's doing the same thing they're doing at school. So I'm not getting out of this, because I'm going to go back to school and it's going to be the same thing at school. So it was a merry-go-round, because he was getting this at school, he's getting it at home, and he's coming back and getting the same thing. So I think that's why it helped impact them more, because parents and teachers and our coach who came in, Abby, were all on the same page together, trying to help one another to help that child.
Makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
Carly and Amber, anything else y'all want to say about this slide, or did we cover it all?
I think we're good. And we definitely agree with Kimberly that consistency is key between home and school.
And what I've heard all of y'all say, maybe not on this phone call, on this webinar, but what I've heard y'all say as we've been working on this webinar is working with the parents on this, right? Yeah. So I think what might be different about the way we supported y'all to work with families was as partners, right? That that we don't do, a behavior plan and send it home and have the parents do it at home, but we really try to work with families to figure out how it will work. So, all right. I have one last kind of quick question for y'all, because we're a little bit tight on time here, but I'm going to ask Kimberly for you to step in, and then Carly and Amber, if y'all have anything to add. How was practice-based coaching, or your experience with Abby or Kim, who was the coach of Carly and Amber, how was it different than other coaching or supervision experiences that you had previously?
Well, when Abby came in, she would let us know, I'm just here to help you. Typically when we have somebody come and observe us, they got paper and pencil, they're writing everything down they can. And Abby was taking notes, but she was also watching, how we helped the situation. to help us figure out, was that the best way I handled it, or could I have handled it a different way and maybe it worked better? There was always brainstorming between us and our coach. And I think that was one of the best things that I liked about it, was because I don't know everything. I'm not going to profess I do. So I want to learn as much as I can so I can help the kids. So I do think that if I could do it over again, I would do another one. If they would come tomorrow and say, hey, and they want to do it, I'd be like, okay, I'll do it. Before, no, I'd be like, I don't want nobody coming to my room. Nope. But it's totally changed my perspective on doing a coaching session with Vanderbilt. And I think it was a great experience for me.
Carly and Amber, do y'all want to say any kind of last words about how it was a different experience or a better experience for you?
I'll let Amber start.
Sure. Yeah. I would say it definitely felt like she was a partner in our team. Even though she wasn't on that matrix, she was a huge part in our daily routine and helping us get through a lot of things. And she also took really the time to get to know our students. It wasn't just, teacher to coach. It was, coach to the students as well, which I think made the kids feel really important too. I mean, they would glow when she came into the classroom all the time. They'd go to her for those hugs, and they really saw her as a part of us, even though she wasn't in here every day. When she wasn't here, it did make a big impact on them, and you could see that. And she was able to see those needs that maybe she saw needs that our students had that we hadn't noticed. A fresh pair of eyes is always amazing. And she also knew like what we needed too. That maybe we didn't see it in each other or in ourselves.
And she would always help us write the action plans, and would follow up weekly about how it was going. And her observations were always based on those action plans. And if we needed to tweak something, we could at that time. And she always just built us up, but like using that positive descriptive feedback for us as well.
Yeah.
This just made us feel more confident and like we were actually doing a great job. It could have been, let me tell you, our coach, I don't know if it was last year or the first year. I think it was the very first year of coaching. She was in my classroom on the first day of school. So she helped a lot that day. So she has seen a lot. And she still found all the positives out of that first day of school. And she just always made it known that she was available whenever we needed her.
And I think that positive aspect is so key, because I think, as we all know, the days can get us sometimes down and out real quickly. And just having that fresh positivity and her belief in us that we could do it even on the hardest days was a huge uplifting feeling.
So this makes me almost cry, you guys, to hear this. I just have to say, and we're getting these just really sweet things in the Q&A about all three of y'all, but I want to say just one thing in closing, which is that, our coaches are really well trained and they do all the things that y'all are talking about. But what makes this work is teachers who are motivated too, right? And so this is definitely transactional, meaning that you're both bringing something to this that's making it work. And we are so grateful that the three of y'all have worked with us. And we keep getting comments about y'all need to do a buy-in thing for teachers because y'all are all so positive. But the one thing I would say about it on the coaching side is that what you've heard Carly and Amber and Kimberly all talk about today is consistency, collaboration, positive. And so what y'all were just saying about Kim getting to know your kids in your classroom, and Kimberly, you talking about Abby just kind of knowing what was going on and being able to jump in. That's not what most people get with coaches. And I think for those of y'all who are out there listening to this, to think about, am I with the teacher? Can I be in the classroom enough that I can really build this kind of partnership? Because I think that's what really makes this work. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to just share one last resource with you guys. So we developed this resource as part of our back to school package this year about ways that teachers and caregivers could get to know the children and families in their classroom, and people love it. And it's available in both English and Spanish, and it'll be available on the resource page for this webinar. So I want to just close out by saying to Carly and Amber and Kimberly, thank you, thank you. This was fabulous. I know you've had a long day of being with little ones, and we appreciate both your commitment to those children and your work with us.
So I want to thank you so much to all of our panelists for their wonderful insights. Your feedback is very important to the work that we do. So please remember to provide your feedback on the webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide into your internet browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.